It's our long-awaited salary cap episode of the Locked On Giants podcast. Who are some of the names that I think could be cut? Who are some of the names that I think might have their contracts restructured? I'm going to tell you all this and more coming up next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. Patricia Traina here with you. Happy Monday, everybody. Now we count down to the Super Bowl. We know who the Super Bowl participants are and what an exciting Super Bowl it's going to be. And needless to say, we won't see the Bucks. We won't see the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, last year's Super Bowl participants. So always nice to see two new teams in the Super Bowl. But anyway, thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day, or if you're watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day. And thank you all so much for continuing to help me grow the YouTube channel. I now know what the free gift is going to be if I hit 2,000. And I will share that with you when I do hit 2,000. So keep on subscribing. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, hit that like button and that little bell to get notifications every time I post something new. All right, so on today's show, I've been promising you guys and gals a salary cap show, and I finally got around to doing it over the weekend. I put out basically 3 different articles. I did a part 1, a part 2, and a supplemental article that I'm going to talk about regarding the salary cap. And I'm going to tell you who I think the Giants should maybe look to move on from, who they should restructure. I'm also going to talk a little bit about how the Buffalo Bills have set up their salary cap, just to kind of give you an idea as to what we might expect from the Giants and new general manager Joe Schoen. Now, before I get into all that, Brian Daboll, the new head coach, is scheduled to be formally introduced to the media on Monday at 10 a.m. So that means, folks, we're going to move the Twitter mailbag to Thursday. So no Twitter Tuesday tomorrow. I'm going to spend that show, the Tuesday show, I'm going to talk about some of the things Daboll's had to say. I'm going to talk about my impressions, all that good stuff. So that's the plan for the show for tomorrow. Again, so if you want to get in on the mailbag, Twitter Thursday will be the day. So you know what to do. I have all the information down in the show notes. Just go on ahead and tweet them to me at Patricia_Traina with the hashtag AskPTrain. Or if you want to email them to me, send them to lockedongiantspodcast@gmail.com, and we'll incorporate as many as we can in the mailbag. And also, those that I don't get into the mailbag on the podcast, I'm putting them also into the Giants Country mailbag, which comes out every Saturday. So check out the Giants Country mailbag because I know there were some questions that came in that I put out into that one. So, all right, let's get down to business here. And I want to talk about first the Bills salary cap management tactics, because I think this is important to kind of understand what we might see from the Giants moving forward. And this article, which I'll link to in the show notes, is on Giants Country, but I'm just going to kind of go through it real quick because it's very important. The Bills, Brandon Beane, when he took over as general manager with Joe Schoen as his assistant general manager, the Bills salary cap was an absolute mess, kind of like the Giants is now. And they implemented some different tactics which have helped restore health to their fiscal situation. And I'm going to talk about them because once free agency starts with the Giants, I think these are some of the things we need to look for in new contracts. Okay, so what's one thing that popped out at me? The Bills have low average per year cap hits. All right, so with the exception of quarterback Josh Allen, I did not see a single player with an annual contract average over $18 million. And if I counted correctly, 7 of the Bills players under contracts have an average earning that tops 10 million, which means that the players aren't overpaid. They don't have inflated numbers because, their first year number was low of their contract and then it swelled up. There wasn't a lot of restructuring, I think, involved in some of those contracts. But anyway, what this ensures is that the Bills are not top heavy like the Giants are. So using data from SpotTrack, I calculated the Bills' top five, the average of the top five cap hits, and they account for 35.9% of the Bills' total cap. The Giants, their top five account for 47.1%. And they have three players, the Giants, Leonard Williams, Kenny Golladay, and Adoree Jackson, who each account for at least 10% or more of the team's total cap space. You can't have that, folks, and have a healthy cap. Just can't have that. Especially when potentially now you're looking at next year signing Daniel Jones to a long-term contract, assuming you don't pick up his option year, which I don't think they will. Saquon Barkley may need his contract redone, assuming they don't trade him. The Giants got to get that under control. And coming up, I'll talk a little bit about, how I would get some of those contracts under control. You can't do all of them, but you can certainly take a look at some of them. All right, this next item really stood out at me. This was kind of fascinating, and I'm going to try to explain it as best as I can. But Josh Allen's contract is set up with, I guess the best way to describe it is tiered guaranteed earnings. So in other words, as opposed to saying, okay, in 2024, Josh Allen's contract is going to call for a $23.5 million guaranteed base salary. Allen actually has to earn that in two tiers, two steps, if you will. So, again, that just so happens to be the case. In 2024, he's due a $23.5 million base salary. But in order for that to be fully guaranteed, he has to be on the roster on March 21st of 2022. And at that point, if he is, he will get $10 million of that 2024 base salary guaranteed. And if he's on the roster as of March 21st, 2023, then the remaining $13.5 million becomes fully guaranteed. All right. And this is really good because if for some reason something were to happen and Josh Allen, let's say he God forbid, suffered a career-ending injury or his performance declined so badly, the Bills give themselves some flexibility to get out from under without being committed to having to pay $23.4 million in guaranteed money to someone who may or may not roster. Cool tactic, I think. And, I would not be surprised if we see the Giants starting to use that on some of their bigger contracts. Okay, another thing that stood out was the use of roster bonuses, which is something, interestingly enough, the Giants haven't used a lot of, certainly not, last year. So the benefit of using a roster bonus is that it lessens the signing bonus. All right. And ideally, the roster bonus will coincide with all or part of the base salary that's guaranteed. But of course, that's not mandatory. So anyway, 16 players on the Buffalo Bills that are under contract for 2022 have a roster bonus, whereas only 5 members of the Giants under contract have a roster bonus. So the way it works is let's say I sign a contract for 3 years. Not 3 years, $12 million, and I have a $3 million signing bonus. So that prorates to $1 million per year. But my agent says to the Giants, okay, we want a little bit more than just a $3 million signing bonus. We want a $6 million signing bonus. So what the Giants could do is say, okay, we'll give you roster bonuses of $1 million for each year of the life of the contract. And what that does is instead of giving me a $12 million signing bonus to where now the Giants would be on the hook for $4 million per year, the signing bonus, you could take $1 million off and now it's $3 million because now you've got the roster bonuses which may or may not be guaranteed. Obviously, if I'm going to gamble on myself, I'm going to say, yes, I'm going to be on the roster and I'm going to collect the roster bonuses, but it helps lower the signing bonus liability, because the signing bonus is prorated over the life of the contract. So that was another thing that stood out. Another thing that stood out was game day bonuses. Now, game day bonuses, this is something I was quite frankly I was surprised that the Giants didn't use more of last year, especially with guys who were coming off of injuries. Game day bonuses are a great way to protect yourself, because if a player is coming off a major injury and you don't know if you're going to have him, for 17 games, or if you have a player who's kind of like a borderline type, you might have him active 1 week, you might not the next week because of strategy and personnel decisions. This is a great way to get money back on the cap. And it does add up. Initially it doesn't look like a lot, but it does add up. So anyway, the Bills have 15 players signed to their cap that are eligible for per game roster bonuses, and the Giants only have 2 out of 51 players currently under contract, which kind of surprised me, because again, it's a great tool to use. If you sign a player and you give him a per game roster bonus and he misses 8 games, so let's say the per game roster bonus is what, I'm trying to think of an even number here. Let's say it's $1 million. All right. And you divide that $1 million by 17 games. All right. And if the player misses 8 games, you take the per game roster bonus, multiply that times 8, and that becomes a cap credit that the team gets back at the end of the year. So really surprised the Giants didn't use a whole lot of, per game roster bonuses last year. I know they use incentives, playtime incentives, statistical incentives, but the gamble there is if guys get injured, then you have those guys who you gave incentives to having a pretty good chance of hitting those incentives. So those incentives, as a rule, they count against the current year's salary cap. And you get credited at the end of the year if a guy doesn't hit a specific incentive, whether it be play time, whether it be, so many sacks in the season, whether it be so many touchdowns or what have you. So again, kind of surprised the Giants went more heavy on that than they did on, the playtime, or I should say the game day bonuses. So, all right. Still have more to come. There's a few more differences that I've noticed about the Bills and how they set things up. That's still to come, as well as my plan to help the Giants get some salary cap space in 2022. That's coming up next. All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's Locked on Giants podcast. But first, if you're aiming to eat healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, but without the calories and without the sugar. Most Built Bars have about 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein, making it easy to stick to any diet plan. Head on over to BuiltBar.com today and use our special promo code LOCKED15 to save 15% off your first order. Again, that code is LOCKED15, LOCKED15 for 15% off your first order at BuiltBar.com. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked on Giants podcast. Patricia Traina here with you. It's Monday, and this is a salary cap show. I promised you guys a salary cap show, and did some research over the weekend, came up with a list of ways that the Buffalo Bills have done things differently. And I mentioned that because, Brian Daboll, Joe Shane coming from the Buffalo Bills, I'm sure we'll start to see some of the tactics that were used up in Buffalo make their way down to the Giants. And some of these tactics, like I said, surprising that the Giants haven't used them a little bit more often, but certainly things to keep an eye out for. And I do want to mention them. And then I'm going to get into salary cap cuts and restructures that I think the Giants can make in order to improve the health of their salary cap. So that is coming up. Let's get back to the list of things that are different between what the Buffalo Bills do with their cap and what the Giants do with theirs. All right. This one actually kind of shocked me a little bit because in the old days, workout bonuses were the thing. It's like every player just about got a workout bonus. Now, maybe the Giants didn't hand them out because they were trying to cut corners. It's possible. But the Bills have not only made use of the workout bonus, they've made heavy use of that. And what I mean by that is the average of their workout bonuses comes out to about $138,000 per player. The Giants' average is $82,857 per player. And the Bills have 22 players who had a workout bonus on their roster for 2022. The Giants only have 7. So, the question here is, will the Giants give out workout bonuses, especially since they're so tight against the cap? They might. The benefit here is twofold. Number one, it encourages the players to get their butts in the building. And just to, just spitballing here, but ideally, I think you probably want to supervise the workouts that these players are doing as opposed to what they're doing with private trainers, just to make sure everybody's kind of, getting ready according to how you need them to get ready. But more importantly, if a player doesn't match or doesn't meet the minimum criteria to trigger that bonus, guess what, folks? That gets credited back to the cap. So the minimum, if I remember correctly, in the past was 90%. I don't know if that's the league minimum or if that was just the Giants minimum. I think the teams set what the minimum number of workout bonuses need to be. And obviously with, COVID and some of these workout bonuses having to be done, some of the workouts, I should say, having to be done remotely. I'm not sure how that all factors in, but still, it's an added incentive to give to a player. And it's easy money. All it means is just show up, put your 2-3 hours in, and then, do that for however many times out of the, let's say there's 20 workouts. You show up for I don't know, 90% of them. Easy money. I mean, why wouldn't you want it? And, if a player is so intent that, I'm going to work out on my own, it's a cap credit. So definitely a method I think we'll start to see. The other differences, the Bills, I did not see any contracts that had voidable years in them, which was a mechanism that the Giants used this past year in order to fit contracts under their salary cap. And the drawback to using voidable years is that you get hit with dead money for players who are not on your roster. So, for example, the Giants this year, Nate Solder has a voidable year. All right, he is not going to be on the 2022 roster. But his $4 million in dead money is, and dead money, teams are going to have dead money regardless. All right, you just can't avoid it. It happens. The trick, though, is not to rack up a lot of dead money. I went and I looked up the average dead money that the Bills had and the Giants over a set period of time. So the Giants, the Bills from 2017 to 2019, which is when Bean and Shane were first, took over the management of the roster and whatnot, they averaged $38,736,000 in dead money. And between 2020 and 2022, the average has dropped to about 7.86 million. That's a pretty good, healthy number there. All right. Because you want to have room to absorb more dead money as you cut players from the training camp 90-man roster. All right. Now, what about the Giants? I went back to the start of the Dave Gettleman era. So from 2018 to 2019, they averaged $49.527 million in dead money. All right. That's a lot. That's a lot, folks. All right. Now, from from 2020 to 2022, that has dropped to about 13.548 million, which is a little better. It's not ideal, but it's better. Now, the good news is as of this recording, the Giants per spot track have $289,206 in dead money, which means they are set up to absorb dead money if they make some deep cuts on their roster to save some salary cap space, which, by the way, I think they're going to do. So, that being said, who are they going to cut? Who are they going to restructure? I'll give you some ideas if you hang around. All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's Locked On Giants podcast. But if you do a lot of driving like I do, you need to know about the Get Upside app, which offers savings every time you fill up at the pump. Download the free Get Upside app today and use the promo code Touchdown when you sign up to get at least 25 cents per gallon or more on your first fill up at participating gas stations. You can cash out anytime you want to your bank account, PayPal, or you can get an e-gift card to Amazon and other brands. So download the free Get Upside app today to get started on saving every time you fill up at the pump. And don't forget to use that special promo code Touchdown to get 25 cents per gallon or more cash back on your first tank. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the segment you probably have been waiting for, and that is the Giants salary cap. Who is going to be cut? Who's going to be restructured? Now, before I get into this, obviously, the article is on Giants Country, where I have some charts and whatnot as far as showing monies, including a master spreadsheet that I put together, which for me to put it on the screen, it would be hard to read, I think, because of the way it's set up. So I will put the link in the show notes so if you want to check that out. But, when I put this article together, this part, originally I had hoped to have it done Saturday, but when it comes to the salary cap, you got to check numbers. You got to, calculate stuff. I tried to look up all the rules for different things, and, I'm pretty sure I got most of them, but, maybe there's some things, I hope there's not a lot that were overlooked, but, so that was one challenge. And then the other challenge is we have a new GM. We have a new head coach. I have no idea who they're going to want. All right. So I might say, for example, that player X should be cut or will be cut. And turns out the coaching staff and Joe Shane might say, we want this guy. So this is just a best guess. It is not definite. It is not driven by any insider information. This is just me putting on my capologist hat and trying to come up with a workable plan. And the plan that I came up with 47.49 million in savings, but it's not a true savings because the Giants are 10.215 in the red in cap space, according to Over the Cap, and their functional cap space is in the red as well, 22.788. So the numbers have to be adjusted. And again, there's a chart on Giants Country. I'll link to that in the show notes if you want to check that out. So let's get down to business, who I think is going to be cut and why. And I'll also talk a little bit about any savings. All right. First off, I've got James Bradberry not sticking around. James Bradberry, I mentioned before about the Giants being top heavy, having 5 guys that account for 47.1% of the salary cap in 2022. And James Bradberry is right up there. He's got a cap hit of $21.763 million in 2022. They're not carrying that number. They can't carry that number. All right. So if he were to be cut, the Giants would save potentially $13.4 million and have a $9.727 million dead money hit. Now, remember, I told you in the last segment, the Giants had a low dead money hit. It was in the hundreds of thousands. I think it was like 260 or something like that. So they're going to have some dead money this year, folks. But the good news is the cap will get better, I think, after this year. So why do I have James Bradberry not sticking around? Basically, the production, he had the Pro Bowl season the first year. The production kind of fell off a little bit last year. The draft class is loaded this year. One of the benefits of the pandemic, if you will, is that a lot of players got an extra year of college eligibility. So you have more talent coming out this year at certain positions. Cornerback is one. The Giants also have, I think, a few young guys whom Jerome Henderson, the defensive backs coach, groomed and was able to get to play at a decent enough level. And if I'm not mistaken, and I'd have to go back and look at the snap counts, I think Adoree Jackson was more or less their man coverage guy when he was healthy. And, Bradbury, I don't want to say lost some of the shine off of his star, but, you just kind of detected something shifted there in terms of responsibility. So anyway, I don't see the Giants carrying that cap. It's nothing personal against Bradbury, but that's a steep number to carry, and I just don't see them carrying it. All right, next guy I see not sticking around. Tight end Kyle Rudolph. Rudolph has a cap hit of $7.408 million. Potential savings there of $5 million, with dead money hit $2.408 million. Now, my rule of thumb when I look at contracts is the potential cap savings, generally I'd like to see it at least double whatever the dead money number is, usually. All right. Sometimes it's not going to be double exactly, but you want to see the potential savings higher than the dead money hit. This is a case where it's a little more than double. And the thing with Kyle Rudolph is he was signed to be a red zone threat, a red zone scoring threat, which he had been in Minnesota all his career. But yet when he got here, what happened? He was barely used in the red zone. I think he had 8 red zone targets, caught 3, and he had 1 touchdown. Now, could he conceivably be a red zone target with this new coaching staff? Sure. Absolutely. Remember what I said before, the new coaching staff might disagree and say, we want this guy, even though, this guy might not be necessarily worth keeping, But the tight end class, from what I understand, has some options. And I think if Evan Ingram walks, which I believe will be the case, you just start all over. You've got Caden Smith, who's under contract. You just start all over again, and you see if you can't build up that position younger, cheaper, and faster. All right, now, what about the numbers for Sterling Shepard? So, currently, his cap hit is $12.495 million. If they cut him this year, before June 1st, they would save $4.505 million with a $7.99 million dead money hit. And what did I say before? Ideally, you want your savings to be twice the number of the dead money. So this is why I think they're going to make him a post-June 1st roster move. The savings then gets beefed up to $8.5 million. The dead money drops to $3.995 million this year, and then $3.995 million next year. Now, the drawback, there is one drawback here with a post-June 1st cut, and that is they can't use the savings until after June 1st. But here's the good news. The Giants are going to have a draft class to sign. All right. And they're going to need roughly, assuming that they stay in the 5th slot overall, they're going to need roughly $12 million in functional cap space, maybe a little bit more than $12 million in functional cap space, which basically means the difference between the draft pick replacing somebody who's in the top 51. So my thinking is take the optimal cap savings and use that to sign your draft class, to sign your undrafted rookies that you might be looking to bring on. And also now you have some money to play around with going into the summer if you need to, bring guys in and out. So that's my thinking there, why I think if the Giants move on from Shepard, they'll make him a post-June 1st cap hit. I think it makes the most sense. Now, here's one other thing about Shepard that I need to mention. Shepard has he suffered a season-ending injury. I think it was like the second or third to last game of the year. I think it was an Achilles. What I wasn't able to find, and I'm still looking for it, is how the injuries, if an injury settlement factors in. I don't know exactly the rules. I've been looking for that, and I've got feelers out for that. So I apologize I don't have that information. But usually when a player is coming off of an injury, in order to avoid an injury settlement that happened, as a result of an injury suffered during the season, the player needs to be able to pass a physical. So all the more reason why you would want to wait before, designating Shepard, as a cut. I mean, you could still let him go today, I suppose, or in February, but I could see the Giants maybe waiting to give him an opportunity to heal up. And, look, I wouldn't mind if they waited. I mean, Shepard has been a good soldier for them. He's the longest tenured member on that team. So, that's a move, quite honestly, if they make it, I would hate that move because Shepard's been such a good, soldier, like I said. But this is business. And, unfortunately, sometimes business decisions just, they suck. So, all right. The next guy that I have down as a cut, punter Riley Dixon. Now, another rule I look at, or another practice that I look at when I put together these projections, is if a player is either in the last year of his contract or has a year remaining in his contract, usually that makes him a prime candidate to be cut if he has if his contract is bigger than his production. I thought Riley Dixon last year, while not a horrible punter, was wildly inconsistent. Part of that, I think, was because he was maybe asked to do some things that weren't quite a fit for what he did well. And I sensed at times, just in looking back at some of the film, was he pressing a little bit? He might have been. But all that being said, inconsistencies just drove me nuts. And this might be a case also of where the coaching staff might say, you know what, we can deal with it. We'll just streamline what we ask them to do and we'll keep them. But Riley Dixon has a $3.12 million cap hit. If he is cut, they will save $2.9 million, and they'll have a dead money total of $320,556. This according to Spotrac. According to Over the Cap. Now, also when it comes to Dixon, he has a $250,000 roster bonus due March 22nd. So add it all together, and if the Giants move on from him, they're looking at almost $3 million in savings, and that would be certainly enough to sign maybe a veteran to a minimum salary deal, or maybe even devote that to the first year number of a backup quarterback, or perhaps even an offensive lineman. So it's worth considering, I think. Okay, up first for a restructure, I have Blake Martinez. Now, Martinez, as we know, he is coming off of a torn ACL. Should be okay to go. And, some people were like, well, will the Giants keep him or get rid of him? I think the Giants will keep him. I mean, Martinez, his production, has been solid. He's a leader. He's a good locker room presence. I can't see, necessarily getting rid of him because of the injury. He does have a $14.025 million cap hit, which is, I think, fifth out of the top heavy guys. And, I think what will probably happen here is maybe the Giants will look to restructure. Now, would they look to maybe give a pay cut? Possibly, but, the thing with pay cuts, to be honest with you, I mean, if a guy is constantly injured, then maybe you look to do that. But, I always feel that injuries are not a guy's fault. So I personally wouldn't do a straight up pay cut unless the guy was just injured and just not producing, period. And he would have to show it over a period of time. So I think what the Giants will probably look to do with Martinez is lower his base salary, convert money into a signing bonus, and tack on an extra year. I think Martinez is in the final year of his contract. Let me just double check. Yeah, 2022 is the final year of his deal. All right, so I think the way I've set this up is you trim off $5 million from his base salary, convert that into a signing bonus. Now that ups his prorated bonus to about $8 million, but it lowers his cap number to about $10.6 million. All right, so that's a savings. Again, his original cap number was $14.025 million. You can lower it to about 10.6. And then you tack on a voidable year, which I know we don't want to run up a lot of voidable years, but the cap number as far as dead money goes is 2.5 million, which is not too bad if you go that route. So, all right. Leonard Williams. This is a contract I'm curious to see if the Giants are going to touch. Leonard Williams has a cap hit of 27.3 million. And I think I did something similar with Williams, where I tacked on a voidable year. So the final year of his deal is 2023. And I did put a voidable year. What I did was I took 10 million off of his base salary, his 19 million base salary, which, by the way, his $19 million base salary is guaranteed. So he has to get 19 million in cash guaranteed this year. So I took off the 10 million from the base salary, converted it into a signing bonus because he's going to get that money up front. Then he'll earn the 9 million remaining of the 19 million that's guaranteed. And I converted that 10 million into a signing bonus, which pushes his number up, especially for 2023. It does push his number up to about 29.63 million. But remember, in 2023, the television contract money is going to kick in. Again, it's going to push some money, some dead money into a voidable year. But that 2024 voidable year, the dead number comes out to something like 3.33 million, which again is not a big amount. So I'm not a fan, by the way, of doing voidable years, because if you're going to have a cap charge, ideally you want the player on your roster. But at the same time, I figured with Leonard Williams, there was a reason why they had the contract end in 2023, and this kind of sticks to that structure. So that's why I took that approach with this particular deal. All right, the other one that I restructured a bit is Kenny Galladay's. He has a current cap hit of 21.15 million. And I think what I did there was, again, something similar, where I took 10 million off the base salary and prorated it over the life of the remaining life of the contract. Now, Galladay already has a voidable year in 2025. The contract voids on February 10th, 2025. So he's going to have a higher dead money hit in 2025, but again, by that time, you're talking the salary cap is going to go up. All right, so I don't know what it's projected for 2025. I know in 2024, over the cap projects it to be 256 million. So I got to think it's going to be higher. The Giants will be able, I think, to absorb that. So I'm not too concerned about, that number going too far up. And like I said, you're going to have to make some concessions here and there and some sacrifices in order to restore health. But I do think at the end of the day, the Giants can get the salary cap fixed after this year. It's going to take a little finagling, but it can be done. So anyway, those are my proposals. I know a lot of you have asked me, who do I think will be a cut? Who do I think will be restructured? That's my answer. Will there be more? There could be. Will all these guys have their contracts touched? Not necessarily. Again, this is just my projections. And, what I recommend, folks, normally I would have these charts for you on the screen, but because I'm also doing the audio aspect of it, check out the article. I'm going to put the link in the show notes to Giants Country. That's where you'll find all the charts, and you'll be able to zoom in and look at them up close and everything like that. Because for me to go over all the numbers, I think, it might just sound like a bunch of jibber jabber, and I don't want to confuse people any more than maybe I already have. So anyway, that'll do it for today's show. I want to thank you for tuning in as always, and also remind you again that Brian Dable's introductory press conference is scheduled for Monday. It's actually scheduled for 10 a.m. on Monday. I will be there. I will be live tweeting. I will have Instagram pictures and hopefully video clips. And after it is done, I'm planning on recording Tuesday's pod. So I'll have my takeaways, notable things that were said, and so on and so forth. So hope you will tune into that. And last but not least, folks, I have to thank you for an amazing month of January. I think the Locked On Giants podcast hit all-time new highs, not just on YouTube, but also on our audio platforms. And I can't thank y'all enough for tuning in and listening. We've seen an increase in our numbers, and I'm just humbled by that. So thank you for making the Locked On Giants podcast part of your day. And if you're making us the first listen of the day, we appreciate that as well. Be sure to tune in tomorrow. I'll have a brand new show for you. Until then, have a great one.